Hey everyone, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology, where we talk about twin flames, ascension, and astrology. And today I'm going to be talking about a 4-year cycle that is coming to a close. So, how I was guided to this was through the astrology and some astrology that happened at the end of 2019 that's being reactivated again now. I talked about this a little bit in my last video, which was about the Gemini full moon, because I feel the Gemini full moon is connected to this energy because there's a couple moon cycles that pertain to the end of 2019. But the most specific one that I want to talk about is the solar eclipse in Capricorn that happened on December 26, 2019. And that eclipse is being reactivated this year because there's going to be a full moon in Cancer on December 26. So let's talk about 2019 and the things that happened at the end of 2019. So there were 5 eclipses in 2019. There were 2 in January. 6 months later, there were 2 in July. And then 6 months later, there was another set of eclipses. They happened 6 months apart. And those eclipses bridged from the end of December to January of 2020. So let's talk about the bigger things that those eclipses activated, and then I'll talk about how it relates to twin flames. So as many of you are aware, what happened in December of 2019 on the world stage was we had the first reported case of the virus, and that happened on December 8th. And then the first case in the US was reported on January 21st. And with that, kind of everything broke loose around the world, right? One of the major impacts that this had was this feeling of separation. Now, there were other things that happened around a similar time or in 2020 that also brought up feelings of separation. But I think that the virus had such an impact. And I'm still hearing from people now that say, like, I'm not recovered from COVID because I felt so alone. One of the things I talked about recently was the issue of abandonment being activated and how we're clearing more layers of abandonment and separation. And it's not just separation with our twin, but we're clearing the separation within the collective. So around this eclipse and some of the other moons that we're going to talk about at the end of 2019, we had this major situation. And, we can describe it a lot of different ways, but I feel like it was a dark energy that was meant to create fear and separation in an attempt to stop people's awakening. It can't do that. It can't win because actually it becomes a stepping stone to awakening as people clear to see through the illusions of it all. And it's a touchy subject. I get that. There's a lot of things about it that haven't been disclosed, plain and simple. And until we get full disclosure, then it's really hard for any of us to judge the situation. So keep an open mind through everything that I'm going to talk about here. So the situation came up and there were lockdowns. For a lot of people, this meant that they were alone for long periods of time, especially people that live alone and they don't have family close by. Or even if they did have family, it might have been like elderly parents or something. And there was too much fear around for people to try and see each other. So there was like separation to the highest power, right? And that's a big part of what needs to be healed now. Because sure, there were things coming before that, the tribalism and stuff that I talked about, it was going on before that. But after this eclipse just seemed like a catalyst for all this separation to come out in a myriad of different ways through events that were taking place. So part of the closing of this cycle is going to be that I think there's going to be these disclosures coming up between now and January, and probably closer to January, I'm thinking, but it could happen anytime. And this is going along with an activation of our sixth chakra and a opening up and a leveling up of the sixth chakra for humanity. And, so I know a lot of you already have your sixth chakra awakened, but because of the clearing and the shifts that's happening, you will be leveling up too. But also this is part of the wave of great awakening energy. So many people that have been asleep are going to start to have their third eye activated. And this is all part of the process. And what I want to say is, this is just coming to me off the cusp, is that there could have been people that they weren't awakened to any possibility of any of this. Like they might have thought that this was all a conspiracy, and they maybe wake up to uncovering something themselves. So maybe it's like someone that's already in the news or something. Could be something like that that happens because of the awakening. This video is somewhat of a companion video as well with the Gemini full moon video because of the Sabian symbols and things that are activated. And for the Gemini full moon, the main one is about a radical magazine or publication asking for action displays a sensational front page, which goes along with some kind of headline. It could be about something else, but I'm getting strongly that it's going to be something about this. I don't know exactly what. Maybe I'll get more information about it, or you'll be hearing things from other people talking about this soon as well. Or, I'm sure other people are talking about it. So there's that. But then there's this twin dynamic. So think back to 2019 and what was going on for you in November, December of 2019. And possibly starting in October, or going into like January, February of 2020. I think anytime within that shift, any period within that time frame would be okay. But with this energy, this dark energy that was brought out, there was a breakdown within many twin flame pairs. This is a card that I keep getting about it a lot when I ask about it. So we have the bridge is closed, basically. And I've been talking a lot about a bridge, this bridge to the fifth dimensional realm, and other people talking about bridges. And this was like the masculine having the bridge closed. So what happened for a lot of twins was that their masculine ran, disconnected somewhat. This is also can be connected to karmic partners in some way. So for instance, I was just asking a friend of mine, hey, what happened to you in December of 2019? And she said, my twin went back to his karmic partner. So some kind of situation, it doesn't have to involve the karmic partner, but in some way feeling like there was a breakdown with your twin. And some of you may have resolved that, but I think for the majority of you that are experiencing this, it has not been resolved yet because it's been part of this cycle of clearing. And in some ways, I feel like even though it could have been the result of dark energy, there's always a good and a bad. So maybe it was an attempt by the dark, but then the light takes that and it turns it to the good. So the good would be that there was so much work and clearing done on healing the separation wound and coming into unconditional love that is benefiting everybody right now. So some of you that actually went through this, you were doing work to heal this, not just for yourself, but so the collective in general could heal from this, and that other twins that maybe didn't experience this, some people didn't even know their twin flame at this point, you're making it easier for them. So give yourself a pat on the back for that, first of all. So we had this bridge closed, and now the bridge is opening. And that is one of the other cards that has been coming through a lot, that I feel like maybe I just was short of putting that piece together of what they were trying to tell me. And it's like the bridge is opening and the communication is healing. That Sabian that I just mentioned about the magazine, right? That's also about communication. Now, does it mean immediately you're going to hear from your twin? It might, but it's a cycle, and there's a buildup and a release. But this is good news, definitely. And so what I want to go over with you guys today is some of the astrology charts relating to this and share some of it with you. So let me pull up the charts. So I'm not going to talk too much about the charts because I am going to do separate videos for all of these moons as well. I already did the Gemini full moon one that I have up, but I did want to show you the chart from the Sagittarius new moon on December 26, 2019, and the chart of the Gemini full moon on November 27th. And what I'm looking for is exact triggers. So exact conjunctions that are activating a degree. So one of the things about this energy of the Gemini full moon, Sagittarius new moon, is that we have the same degree activated, and that is 4 degrees Sagittarius. Now, the new moon was when the sun and the moon were conjunct at 4 degrees. And now 4 years later, there's a full moon, there's an opposition. This is how the cycle goes. So the sun is at 4 degrees, but the moon is at 4 degrees of Gemini. So with the cycles, often the moon, whether it's a full moon or a new moon, will be like a day later and almost a degree later, such as we have here, right? This was the 26th, this is the 27th, but they're not usually on the exact same degree. Occasionally it happens, but often not. So to have this 4th degree activated, I feel is like rekindling that old energy, if you will. And there's a couple other interesting things here. I did go over the Sabians for the Gemini full moon in my previous video. But if you look over here in Cancer, we've got this degree of Cancer being activated, the 25th degree. On the Gemini full moon on the 27th, we have the asteroid White Rabbit making an exact conjunction with where Washington was on November 26th. Now, White Rabbit is an asteroid that represents going down the rabbit hole, kind of a conspiracy asteroid. I think it goes back to the Matrix, where they say, follow the white rabbit. I could go back further than that, but I'm not aware of it. So if you know, share it with me in the comments. But there's an interesting energy with this, right? Because what you're going to see as we go over the moons is that these two stay together. And at each new moon, full moon cycle, they're on the same degree. Now, remember, this is going 4 years apart. They were both going in retrograde, or I should say White Rabbit is going in retrograde now, and Washington was going in retrograde in 2019. And even though we're 4 years apart, two different asteroids, they're moving backwards and staying together. So I feel like this is a clue that it has something to do with Washington, the city Washington. So the Sabian symbol for this fourth degree of Sag that's being activated in both cases by the sun is an old owl perched high up in a tree. Now, what's interesting about this Sabian is some of the key words that the author of my Sabian book, who's Linda Hill, and the cautions for this Sabian are smug denial of available wisdom, someone thinking they know it all, always being alone, remote and cut off, sitting isolated, inability to sleep soundly, black magic, excluding others, acting old before one's times. I feel like this really fits the situation of what was going to happen in 2019. Now, technically, this new moon was 2 weeks before the first case, but I think it's safe to assume that things were underway already at this time. Now, the more positive energy of this aspect, of course, a Sabian, is wisdom. Wisdom and strength, a wise sage, nocturnal vision, the ability to see all around. As I mentioned in the last video, an owl can turn its head all the way around. So it has a 360-degree view. And because it's in a tree, it has a higher up view. So already this was giving us an activation to wake up, to see from a higher perspective. So let's look at 12/12. So this year we have a new moon on December 12th. And in 2019, we had a full moon on December 12th. And I feel like this cycle, we could take it back even further because, of course, there was the 12/12/12 portal. I personally had a major awakening on 12/12, in which for the first time I had a vision of a past life that I had lived with my twin. And that changed everything for me because I began to realize that there was no such thing as death. And I was just living many, many lifetimes. That was actually kind of important to me because my mom had died 2 months before that. So I was still grieving a lot. So I think it goes back to that portal even. 12/12 is going to be another big activation day, an awakening day for everybody this year. There was a Gemini full moon in 2019. And this year, there's a Sag new moon. Now, these are not on the exact same degree. They're on the same day, but the new moon is at 20 degrees. And in 2019, the full moon was at 19 degrees and change. So you see that it's not always on the same degree. But there's a few other things being activated if we compare 2023 with 2019. So first of all, going back to Cancer, we have again White Rabbit and Washington. As I said, they're staying together. They're at 23 degrees now. We also have an exact conjunction between the charts of the South Node and Mercury. Both of those at 8 degrees Cap. So remember, this is 4 years apart. This year in 2023, Mercury is going to be 8 degrees Cap. And in 2019, the South Node was at 8 degrees Cap. It was activating that. And they were only 4 seconds apart. So Mercury's at 828. The South Node in 2019 was at 824. Very, very tight conjunction. And let's just read the Sabian symbol for that degree. An angel carrying a harp. Keywords: demons driven away by music, lifting faith and hope, messages of peace from the other side. being in tune spiritually, having an elevated view of humanity, creating harmony, salvation arrives when most needed, messages of love and hope arriving, pulling the heartstrings, promises of redemption, revelations, cautions, having a holier than thou attitude, promising more than can be delivered, harping on things, messages that deceive or lead astray, playing a tune, expecting all to follow. So if we look at 2019, we would want to look at the cautions, right? Messages that deceive or lead astray, playing a tune and expecting everybody to follow. Like very much in everything that happened after this, there was a push for everybody to just fall in step with what was being said, and no chance to individualize or to not fall into the narrative meant being canceled or worse. Melodies that deceive or lead astray, harping on things, dwelling on issues. I don't think I need to clarify that. So now with Mercury here, we want to look at the more positive, which is faith, hope, being in tune with spirit. It's interesting because my friend was telling me recently that she heard from other people a couple days ago that there was a group of angels being sent to Earth to help humanity, which would really fall in line with the Sabian symbol. When we're dealing with the South Node, we're dealing with karma. A lot of our karma has to do with false belief systems. And so with Mercury being here now, it could be that we're overcoming false belief systems and taking that higher perspective. Mercury is also communication. Communication is healing on one level because of the 6 chakra activations that we're getting of the third eye. But I feel like with twins, this is activating additional healing of communication. Now, I say with twins, but we need to heal communication on a collective level. Because of the polarization, it's really hard to hear each other when we're in those polarized forms, and therefore communication has broken down. So that is healing as well. And we're all here helping to heal that communication. There was another interesting kind of facet here, and that is in the chart for 1212, we have Washington opposing White Rabbit, and it's exactly opposite where Washington was in 2019. So again, Washington being the focus, and it's not an exact square, it's like 1 degree off, but of course we have the North and South Node. So I haven't talked about this Sagittarius new moon yet, but there is going to be this grand cross between the nodes and White Rabbit in Washington. So we'll see what that brings. Again, that could be activating the disclosure, could happen anytime. And indeed, things have been coming out little by little about different things, but as I said in another video, it's not really being reported on or listened to by the mainstream. It's still being covered. It's still being covered up. Actually, something I just noticed was that in 2019, Union was almost in the place where the South Node is. It was like 4 seconds away from being on the same degree, which is interesting. And so it also is where that grand cross is going to be. But South Node Union, the past, I feel like it's saying there's a healing. There's been a lot of karmic and past life healing. Well, what's really interesting with that is if you look at the chart for 2019, which is the red chart on the outside, you have Union was square to this really tough group of planets, Saturn, Pluto, and Venus in Capricorn, and those were opposing Washington. Saturn is the energy of blocks. So this is definitely showing that there was some kind of block to the energy of union, and it was likely caused by people on purpose. So let's look at the 26th of December. Okay, so we're looking at the Cancer full moon on December 26, 2023 is the blue on the inside, and outside is the Capricorn solar eclipse on December 26, 2019. Now, here we're dealing with the same day, and they're on the same degree, which is 4 degrees of Capricorn. At least, right, we're dealing with a full moon and a new moon. So a new moon is when the sun and the moon are on the same degree or the same sign. And the full moon is when they're in opposing signs. So in 2023, this year, the sun will be on 4 degrees Capricorn and the moon will be on 4 degrees Cancer. But this is more powerful than the other 2 charts we looked at because this is an eclipse. And when there's an eclipse, that degree is activated for a longer period of time. And it gets triggered by other planets going over it. Let's take a look at what we have here. So the Sabian symbol for Capricorn is Indians, some rowing a canoe while others are dancing a war dance. So this is interesting because we've got 2 groups of people in the Sabian. Some are rowing a canoe and some are dancing a war dance. I feel like this is representing the kind of tensions between those in the collective energy that want unity and that want to work together. Those are the ones rowing the canoe. Others are dancing a war dance. This group doesn't want harmony and peace. It wants to create destruction and chaos. We can see the Sabian as representing polarization. But I will give you some of the key words. Some getting on with their lives while others are not. Vehicles of discovery versus arguing and bickering. Threats and intimidation. Making a show of power and mobility. Cooperation brings release from difficulties, mobilizing forces, group efforts. Cautions are being emotionally charged, arguments and bickering that halt forward movement or growth, intimidation, moving targets. Superficial shows of strength for display purpose, making a lot of noise, gestures that threaten, accepting no opposition to progress, aggression, divergent motivations leading to confusion. I feel like this is almost a do-over. Like we kind of had the worst there in 2019. Now we're getting a chance to do it over. Are more of us now ready to be in a group that's rowing a canoe? I think in a lot of ways so. Even if within that group that wants to now row the canoe towards peace, there is still polarity within that group alone. And so our work is not over yet. But at least with the twins, I think we're more ready for harmonization. And one of the cards that I was getting as I asked about this energy actually was a card where people are rowing. So not exactly a canoe. It's like the sport of rowing, but very similar. And that card is about working together, being a team. Because if you're trying to row and you're all rowing in different directions, you don't get anywhere. Everybody has to work in a unified way to get the canoe to actually move forward. So I see this as really positive. Now we also had Mercury and Mercury on the same degree on both charts. And Mercury is at the 25th degree of Sagittarius. This one is a flag bearer in battle. Now, we've talked recently about healing the war issues, how the masculine energy within all of us is clearing war, violence, and the terrible things that come from that. Yes, death and destruction, but also for the individuals taking part in that, or being victimized by that. There can be post-traumatic stress and a lot of issues. So keywords are having the courage of convictions, standing up for ideals, representing one's collective in a worthy cause, carrying the flag, David and Goliath, being the messenger, leadership, self-sacrifice, fighting for political ideals, flag waving. So that's the positive. So remember, that's Mercury in the 2023 chart. Now, Mercury in the 2019 chart, we're going to look at the cautions. The sacrificial lamb, overzealous idealism, empty shows of courage, always being ready to go into battle, violence, fanaticism, the inability to keep quiet, violence, fanaticism, being ready to go into battle. And that's the kind of energy that is very argumentative. Now, even in the positive, of course, there could be some argumentative energy within that, because in order to stand for our ideals and our convictions, we may have to argue or debate. But I think that we're going to see after this shift, the way that we do that is more balanced. And it won't be that we have to argue and fight and pull low blows, but we'll be more empowered, and we'll be able to just state our ideals and our convictions with power and have the wisdom to back it up, because the wisdom, which is coming from the threefold flame, is definitely part of this shift as well. Another interesting degree we have activated is Chiron and Pandora. So in 2019, asteroid Chiron was at 1 degrees 31 minutes of Aries. Now, Chiron is healing, and not just healing emotionally or spiritually, which is what we often think of with Chiron, but Chiron can be healing our physical health as well, being sick, disease, this sort of energy. And at the 2023 Cancer full moon, Pandora is at 1 degrees 40 minutes of Aries. Again, a very tight conjunction, just a few seconds apart. Pandora is an asteroid that represents something being let out of the bag. If you remember the myth, Pandora opens the box that she's not supposed to open, and she lets all the evils out into the world. Except for hope is the one thing that she saves. But it's like Pandora is like something is out of the box. Something is like the cat is being let out of the bag when it comes to something related to Chiron, or our healing, if you will. We have Karma next month being on the same degree where Neptune was in 2019. And the Sabian symbol for this degree, which is, they were on 16 Pisces, and Easter promenade. But listen to some of the key words. Renewed faith in one's life circumstances, rising up from doubt, fear, and loss, rebirth, forgiveness, spiritual unity, religious holidays, worship, renewal, transformation. So remember, the key words that are the positive keywords are representing this year. That's where karma is. So healing and clearing around these key words. Now let's look at the negative, representing 2019. Superficial shows of unity, craving for attention, always needing an excuse to get together and unite, empty displays of faith or joy, doing things only because everyone else is doing them, feeling lost, alone, and forsaken in the crowd, guilt trips. So, wow, so many of those key words were what we were experiencing in 2019. I mean, there were a lot of guilt trips, feeling lost and alone, craving attention, superficial shows of unity. There was a lot of virtue signaling going on after this, going into 2020. Remember, Neptune can be illusions. So we can be putting up a front of illusion with Neptune. We can be acting. And then we go back to our old friends, White Rabbit in Washington, and they are now retrograded back to the 20th degree of Cancer. Now in 2019, remember we had said that Washington was opposing Saturn. And on December 26th, on the eclipse day, it wasn't an exact opposition. But let's look at the Sabians for the degrees that White Rabbit and Washington hit in Cancer. So when I first showed these two asteroids together at the Gemini full moon, the Sabian was guest reading in the library of a luxurious home. So this could be representing getting information. Remember, White Rabbit is going down the rabbit hole. It's doing research, trying to figure something out or trying to see if something is real or if it's a conspiracy theory. So going to this library could represent like people doing research, people getting more information, especially because this is coupled with the Gemini full moon and the Sag new moon, and getting information and divining between knowledge and wisdom. Like what knowledge being, what are people telling us? That we should believe what people are telling us versus wisdom, which is we should believe our own inner truth. But it could also be like a meeting, a secret meeting. If we look at the 2019 and Washington being on this degree, it could have been like a closed door meeting that we don't know about. Then we had them at the 12-12 moons on the 24th degree of Cancer. A woman and two men, or a man and two women, cast away on a small island. Actually, the first thing that came to me when I read this was something to do with Epstein, but I doubt they will have the same thing, although you never know. Something about Epstein's island could play into this with the higher powers that be here. But the other thing that came to me after this was the third party interference, because we have a love triangle, a woman and two men, or a man and two women. So part of this energy for you, that block, could have been coming from a karmic partner in some way, or some kind of interference, whether, you know, consciously or subconsciously, whether it was a negative, you know, external interference, or whether it was just our soul's divine plan. At any rate, there was this, you're being stopped. And now coming into December 26, they're going to be on a prima donna singing. And this one has to do with finding our voice. It could also be connected to drama, because prima donnas we think of as being a bit dramatic. But I think I'll read some of the key words for this one. So in the positive, powerful voice, emotional dramatizations, taking center stage, messages that need to be heard for social reasons, playing out the myths of society, feeling important, fame and fortune, commanding attention, years and years of training, cautions, which would be what was activated in 2019, overplaying one's role, driving people to distraction, refusing to keep quiet, demanding to be heard, wanting everyone to listen, overreacting, throwing tantrums, not knowing when to stop. There are a couple other interesting things. Now, remember I did a video a while ago that talked about a woman? A woman could be involved still. And in the 2019 chart, we had White House opposing Lilith. So, yeah, a higher up woman could have something to do with this. Also, a little more ominous is in the 2019 chart, we had the asteroid Lucifer opposing the eclipse. And that Lucifer would have also been making a square to Chiron, which is where Pandora is now. And Lucifer, the asteroid Lucifer would represent dark energy or interference energy. Also, going back to 1212 in 2019, Lucifer was transiting on the North Node, and on that full moon in Gemini, Lucifer was in an exact opposition with truth. So was there some darker energy trying to hide truth or hinder truth? I guess that's fully yet to be seen, but maybe we'll have more clarity on this soon. So please leave a comment and let me know. Were you part of what happened at the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020? Share your experience, or if you don't want to share your experience, just leave me a comment and say resonates or something so I get an idea of how many of you watching actually felt the shift for twin flames in 2019. But this looks very positive as far as this healing of separation on multiple levels, healing communication. And I know we're all looking forward to changes in a new direction in these areas. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support. If you could give this video a like, I would really appreciate that. If you want a personal reading, my information will be linked below. I'm sending you all a lot of love, and I'll speak to you again soon.